Another witch, another basement. Welcome to my review for Inferno, which came out in 1980, the year I was born. Yay! So this is the first sequel to Suspiria. It's not as well known as that film. And I can remember feeling a little bit surprised by that when I first watched these a couple of years ago, because to my mind at least, Inferno is in the same ballpark of quality as Suspiria, but it's certainly not as well renowned, it's not as famous. The title of the film is not very distinguishable. Inferno, you know, there've probably been quite a few films over the years called that or have titles similar to that. Suspiria definitely stands out more. The witch in this one is called Mother Tenebraeum. Now the weird thing about this is that the film Argento would go on to make after this is called Tenebrae, but that has nothing to do with the Three Mothers trilogy. So I kind of thought to myself the other day, couldn't this film have been called Tenebrae just to give it a snazzier title? I say that having no idea what Tenebrae actually means. If it just happens to mean famous author suspected of murder, then I guess things are fine the way they are, but I don't think it does. I think it means something to do with a church service or a holy service, but that wouldn't really describe the plot of Inferno or Tenebrae. Another thing that I remembered about this trilogy as a whole is that each film deals with one witch in turn, but on my rewatch the other night I realised that that's not strictly true, because this film has a bit of crossover with the third witch who lives in Rome, who we're not really going to deal with until Mother of Tears a lot further down the line. So this is possibly the most expansive of the three films, although having said that, we still don't find out that much about the lore of the Three Mothers. I watched an interview with Argento, which is actually on the Inferno disc, where he says that he claims that he knows all the answers about where the Three Mothers come from and their history. He knows all the answers to the various riddles and unanswered questions posed in these films, but he chooses not to give out the information in the films because he just thinks that the films are more effective if they're left ambiguous and the viewer is left in a position of having to really make their own mind up about certain things. And I'd kind of go into that way of thinking. I think these films are better with a lot left unexplained. You know, this whole idea of what you don't know is scarier, sort of thing. So the plot in more detail for this particular one sees a young woman called Rose. She's a poet. She lives in an apartment block in New York, and she just happens to read this book one day about the Three Mothers, which was written by some alchemist back God knows when, and she suspects that she's living in the same building as the New York witch, something to do with the smell around the building. Now, by weird coincidence, she just happens to have a brother who lives in Rome, where, of course, one of the other witches lives. So, yeah, a little bit of a coincidence there. And this brother, Mark, he has a friend called Sarah who gets involved as well and starts her own little private investigation as to whether her and Mark live near a witch. So you've got various people sort of investigating whether these witches exist in this film. And, of course, the witches somehow know that they're being looked into, and they're not too happy about it, and deaths swiftly follow. Another reason why this film is possibly not as well regarded as Suspiria is the fact that we don't really get a clearly defined heroine. So in the first film, there's a character called Suzy Banyan, played by Jennifer Harper. We don't go that deeply into that character, but she's still completely iconic when it comes to that film. I mean, you've only got to look at a still of Harper set against a brightly coloured orange or green background and you instantly recognise it as Suspiria. You can't really do that with the characters in Inferno because we just don't spend enough time with them individually. So there's a weird structure in this film, and I'm going to go into spoilers now if that bothers you. 3, 2, 1. Whereby we get a main character introduced to us and then they're killed off, and then we get another girl who steps into the fray, and then just when we think she's going to be the final girl, she's killed off, and then it happens a third time, and eventually it falls on Mark to finish the film off. But it's kind of weird that we get all these sort of fake final girls, and what it means is that even now, for me, 2 nights after rewatching the movie, I can't instantly picture the Rose character in my head. I can't instantly picture what Sarah looks like, but I can definitely picture what Jennifer Harper looks like. And it's not like I've seen Suspiria that many more times than Inferno. I think I've watched both films twice now. I did watch Suspiria a third time to watch the audio commentary, but these characters in Inferno, they're just not on the screen long enough for them to become really memorable parts of the whole experience. It's not that I have a problem with them being killed off in this. I'm just sort of looking for explanations as to why Inferno has possibly not gone down as well over time as Suspiria. It's not become as famous. The structure of the plot in this film could almost be like the Pulp Fiction of horror movies. I mean, you've got like 3 segments featuring different characters, which, I mean, you could play them out of order and I don't think it would really alter the quality of the movie. You could start this film with Mark in New York confronting the New York witch and then maybe have some of the other stuff later on, just play it all out of sequence. It could be quite interesting. I do think that my favourite part of this film is the Rome segment, which ironically enough is the one part of the film which deals with the Rome witch, who we're not meant to be getting to properly until the film after this, but there's so much to love about the Rome segment. I love the architecture and the locations. There's this wonderful circular lecture room. There's a library that's used which just looks absolutely magnificent. The music is at its best in this film, in the Rome part. There's some great classical stuff. There's one scene in a taxi cab where the Sarah character, I think, is being taken to the library. It's a scene which sort of brings back memories of Suzy being in the taxi cab from Suspiria, but there's this really weird session track which is playing over the top of the taxi scene in this. It sounds like a rock group just playing all the instruments in the room and just coming up with some random crap that they're not actually going to release as a song. It's kind of odd as well because it comes just after we've been listening to classical music in a lecture theatre. It's kind of bizarre. I'm not actually sure if you get to see the Rome witch in this film. There's a girl who pops up with a cat in the lecture theatre, but I don't know if that's meant to be one of the 3 mothers or one of her helpers, or maybe it's just some local girl who's been bewitched in that moment into looking creepy. She pops up once more, but that's the last we see of her in this. And there's also another character who's working beneath the library in a room where he's like bubbling loads of pots and cauldrons and things. And I think to myself, is that the Rome witch in disguise as a man? Is that just one of the helpers? Is that the same person who goes on to murder Sarah and her new friend at the apartment building just slightly later on? So lots of unanswered questions in this film, as Argento intended apparently, but I like that. It makes the film so rewatchable because if you get all the answers at the end of a film, it does demystify it a lot of the time, and then the next time you watch the film it's never quite the same. That's certainly not the case with Inferno. It's just as unsettling on second viewing as it is on first. This film also has one of my favourite Argento kills. Granted, I've not seen that many of his films past Tenebrae at the time of doing this video, but it's a brilliant kill. It's actually a double kill. It's of Sarah and her new friend Carlo at Sarah's apartment building. The knife in the neck that Carlo gets is glorious, but what I really like about the scene is the way Carlo sort of falls on top of Sarah, but he's grappling with her and keeping her pinned down. I've seen in other films women lying underneath bodies and the weight of the body has meant that they've really struggled to get out from underneath, but I've never seen a dying person be quite this physical as Carlo is in this scene, and it's perfectly believable that somebody in their death throes would do that, and ultimately it proves fatal for Sarah. But the real finishing touch to the whole scene is the classical music that plays over the top of it. It just makes the whole thing seem so operatic. It's a real high point for the movie, and it finishes off the Rome section brilliantly. There's a lot of good stuff in New York as well. The opening salvo with Rose going down into the basement and she loses her keys in this flooded ballroom. It's an unusual way to start a movie, but it's very atmospheric. I don't think there's much music in that scene at all, but you can hear like the drip drip sounds from the room around, and any little sound that plays sort of amplifies, and the underwater shots look absolutely gorgeous. It's very silty down there. The moment where Rose screams, I kind of think to myself, could somebody actually do that? Open their mouth that wide to scream and not be engulfed by the water and drown? I don't know. I don't particularly want to try it, but I totally thought that Rose was going to buy it in this opening scene because she's not really established as a main character at this point. I do think the witch in this film moves the corridors and the rooms around with magic somehow, because characters seem to get lost in this place very, very easily. Even the ones who live there, like Rose and Elise, they seem to be able to find their way from the foyer to their rooms okay. But if they take any kind of sidestep in any other direction, they seem to get lost. And there's one fantastic room that I remember where Mark comes inside this room and there's like clay statues against either wall, and I wanted him to spend a little bit more time in this room and examine these things more closely, but no, he barrels on through to the next room beyond, and I think it's not too far after that we get the finale, the final confrontation between him and the witch. I've only really got one negative about this film which does genuinely annoy me, and that's the death of the bookshop owner. He carries a bag of cats to this stream and then drowns them. Now obviously these aren't real cats who are dying, it's just sleight of hand, but it annoys me. I'm a big lover of cats and dogs. Even watching fictional cats die just doesn't quite sit right for me, and I have to ask myself, was it really necessary for the scene? I mean, could the cats have just not jumped out of the bag at the last minute and that could have tripped the guy up and then he would have landed in the stream and the rats could have got him then? I do like the fact that the hot dog seller suddenly runs over and finishes him off with the knife. That was really unexpected because you think that he's going to help the bookshop owner. I don't know if he's actually selling hot dogs. It could be anything. It's just some kind of random fast food counter. Now, I assumed, like most people probably do at first, that this guy has probably just been bewitched by Mother Tenebraeum. But I thought about it a bit more, and I've got a new theory now. So I think I don't think this guy has been bewitched at all. I think he's just some completely normal guy who has seen the bookshop owner come to this stream before to drown cats, and he's had enough now, and he's like, right, if that guy comes back one more time hurting animals, I'm going to frigging have him. And literally that's what it is. It's just some guy hating the bookshop owner decides to do him in, which is also horror, perfectly legitimate. So yeah, that's what I think of the scene. I was tempted to mention another negative, and I refer to the ending now, where the witch sort of dies really pathetically. Or does she, though? Because, again, after stewing on it a little bit longer, I kind of think that maybe she just gets away, because she seems very happy and confident when she's confronting Mark. So maybe what we see in the fire is just an avatar of the witch, an extension of her somehow. I'm perfectly content with the idea that the witch survives this movie, and in doing so survives the whole trilogy. That works absolutely fine for me. I think that's better than thinking that she dies in this fire really pathetically. I mean, that wouldn't make her a very strong witch at all. So yeah, I'm going for that. I'm going for the fact that she does survive. So I'll quickly show you the version of the film that I've got for this. I've got an Arrow Blu-ray. It comes with a little booklet, which is really cool. It's got a few writings about the film, some pictures as well. I like it when Blu-rays come with these. And it does have some features, a few interviews and little mini docs and things. It doesn't have an audio commentary, which I'm a little bit disappointed about. I would have loved to have seen a commentary for this film. I've just bought Tenebrae on Blu-ray because that's the next film I'm going to be covering after this. And I noticed the Tenebrae Blu-ray, which is also done by Arrow, has 2 commentaries. So a little bit annoying that, but that's the way that the chips fall sometimes. So I guess it's time to go to the Bag of Terror and find out how I'm going to score this baby. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, struggling to hold them, 4.5 bloody axes. That is a pretty terrific score. It is slightly less than the masterpiece score I gave Suspiria, but it's not much worse. I do really love this film, though. It is an acquired taste. I can see why it's not for everybody. You have to sort of be of a certain mind to really like this film, I think, but I somehow end up in that category, and I'm absolutely looking forward to watching Tenebrae again for the first time in quite some time. So do join me for that, and I'll catch you again next time. Bye-bye.